Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to the Crawley Muslim Network internship. Just want to introduce myself. I'm Hamza, and alongside me, I've got Mirza, as well as all of the interns at the Crawley Muslim Network internship. What we did here was we opened up an internship this summer, and we've done this a number of times before, but this time we wanted to expand it and kind of go a bit further than what we did before. The focus was on not just the business analyst stream, but we also wanted to focus on a few other areas. One area was technology, and the other new areas were also, medical related as well. So with this in mind, please feel free to give feedback to the interns as they've worked really hard this week, and it's been quite intense. There's a range of them, so there'll be from 16 to 21 to 22, all around students and early on in their careers. So yeah, let's see how they do. I'm going to pass it over to Mirza, who's going to introduce the medical stream, and then we'll see the medical presentation shortly.
Amazing. Thank you, Hamza. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Mirza. I'm a doctor currently working in the NHS, and I do some other research bits here and there. I was the lead for the medical research program here with CMN, and I've had the fortunate privilege, alhamdulillah, to work with some really good interns this year, and they've put together quite a few nice projects, which is really good, alhamdulillah. They've all worked on their own, so they'll be presenting their projects individually, and I'm really excited to hear everyone's thoughts and feedback towards them. But yeah, so essentially a quick overview of how this week worked for my group. We met on Sunday after the agile training that everyone had, the agile coaching, and broke down essentially what a research project is, what it looks like, and how to put together a research proposal. My team then went away, and over the course of the 5 days, fairly intensively, but alhamdulillah, they all did really well. They put together some preliminary research proposals, as well as some of them did more in-depth research on various medical topics, and have put together some really good presentations and have got some really good initial findings, alhamdulillah. And so, without further ado, I'll be passing it on to Mohammed, who will be doing the first presentation.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Mohammed, and my talk will focus on the role of a protein called LRRK2 in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So to begin with an overview, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are the world's leading neurodegenerative diseases, each affecting millions worldwide. Now, whilst these conditions are two distinct conditions, they do share many overlapping features, like the accumulation of specific proteins. In Alzheimer's, this is amyloid beta, while in Parkinson's, this is alpha-synuclein. Other shared features include the loss and degeneration of neurons, dysfunctional mitochondria, and neuroinflammation, where the brain's immune system becomes activated in response to stress or damage, but overactivation can become harmful. Now, with these conditions, the greatest risk factor is aging, and the key feature of aging is a process called cell senescence, where cells stop dividing and begin to release harmful molecules that damage normal cells. This process can be characterized by different senescence markers, which we'll see shortly. In the brain, there are different cell types, one in particular being microglia. These are the brain's immune cells, and in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, they play an important protective role, where they are responsible for clearing out any unwanted substances like amyloid beta and alpha-synuclein. But because they're constantly doing this, it places a lot of stress on these cells, resulting in DNA damage. So from this point, the cell has two options. First is that if the damage is too severe and irreparable, it will simply die for a process called apoptosis. The alternative is that it will become senescent, and most of its functions will be impaired. A recent study used different brain cell types to compare the levels of two senescence markers, GLB1 and P16, and the findings showed increased senescent microglia compared to these other cell types, and this is why we have a particular interest in these cells. But one key open question remains is that what actually drives this senescent process? This brings me to LRRK2. LRRK2 has been genetically linked to Parkinson's, And an upregulation of LRRK2 is associated or has been associated with increased senescence markers like P21. So based off all of this, we hypothesized that if LRRK2 activity in microglia contributes to microglial senescence, then individuals with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's will have more senescence microglia that express LRRK2 compared to healthy individuals. This is because LRRK2's activity may influence senescence through different signaling pathways. To address this, a patient cohort was first established. This was an entirely male cohort of brain tissue samples collected from the prefrontal cortex of individuals with these different conditions. So we have the healthy individuals, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's with dementia, dementia with Lewy body, and Parkinson's disease. For our aims, we first wanted to assess the pathology burden, so measuring the amount of disease-related material that's present in the brain. And we used a technique called immunohistochemistry to visualize the proteins amyloid beta and alpha-synuclein. We then examined the senescent microglia using fluorescence imaging. And lastly, we incorporated LRRK2 into this imaging so that we can investigate the association between senescence and LRRK2. To begin with the pathology burden of amyloid beta or 48, these are representative images taken from each condition, and all of the brown staining that you see is the amyloid beta. This was then quantified as the percentage of positive area to give us this data. Despite the variation and differences not being statistically significant due to low sample size, the Alzheimer's group did display the highest percentage area, which is what we were expecting. We did a similar thing for alpha-synuclein or 5G4, and in this case, the brown is the alpha-synuclein. This was also quantified as the percentage of positive area, and in this case, the Parkinson's disease groups display the highest burden, and this trend again aligns with what we were expecting. Once we characterized this pathology, we then wanted to look at the microglia. So we used fluorescence imaging to visualize these specific markers. So blue represents TAPI, which is used to stain the nuclei of all the cells. The yellow represents LRRK2. Cyan represents P16, which is the senescence marker. And red is IBA1, which represents the microglia. This was taken from a healthy sample, and although we did not observe any senescence, we did see the expression of LRRK2 in microglia. Now, comparing this with a Parkinson's case, we observed the expression of both LRRK2 and P16 in microglia. And to our knowledge, this actually represents the first evidence of the expression of LRRK2 and P16, which is exciting. So in summary, these findings suggest that microglial senescence is potentially a shared mechanism between Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and that there may be an association between LRRK2 and senescence, as we did observe some senescent microglia that express LRRK2. This gives an indication on whether LRRK2 can be used as a therapeutic target. At the moment, LRRK2 inhibitors are in development for Parkinson's, with some progressing to clinical trials. So with this research, given the progress, there is potential to remodel these drugs into new drugs that can target this senescence mechanism for both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. That being said, this study does not come without its limitations. The samples that were used in this research are fixed samples, meaning that whatever we're seeing is at a fixed point in time. And this limits any conclusions that can be drawn on what processes actually came first. The low sample size and the male-only cohort is limiting, as it's known that Alzheimer's is more prevalent in females. So for future research, in the short term, it would be ideal to include additional senescence markers like GLB1 and P21 so that we can better characterize the senescence process. We should quantify the entire cohorts, including male and female comparisons, to validate our findings. And future research would also look at the spatial analysis, so not just how many senescent microglia are present, but also where they are located. And lastly, in terms of the bigger picture, to combat the fixed tissue limitation, we should use alternative models that utilize stem cells and brain organoids that enable us to actually track any changes or interactions in real time. And this will aid in giving us a better understanding of these mechanisms and therefore potentially identify therapies that target this for both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I thank you all for your time, and I'm happy to answer the questions, if any.
Fantastic, mashallah. Good research there, Mohammed. So we've got some time for a couple of minutes for any questions anyone might have in the chat. So feel free to type that in or unmute yourself and say it out loud. I guess one initial question I would have would be, you said you only looked at a male cohort. What would you be expecting, if you can say preliminary things, what would you be expecting to find in a mixed or female cohort?
So, since Alzheimer's is known to be more prevalent in females, I would expect, well, at first, I would expect the results to be fairly similar. Like, we would expect to see a lot of the same pathology, so a lot of the same proteins that we saw in the male cohort. But the main purpose of including the female cohort would be to determine whether any disease progression that we see, if this follows a sex-specific pattern, or if it's just limited to males and just females only. So it would be good to include a female cohort to enable this comparison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good, cool. Mohammed, if you stop sharing now, we'll just wait for any other questions. And in that meantime, Aidan, if you can start sharing.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we're only gonna have one time for one question each. So let's just keep going, inshallah.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Well, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, yeah, that looks good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll start. Okay, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aidan, and my project looks at why some patients develop problems with their new aortic valve and aorta following a type of heart surgery called the arterial switch operation. Okay, the background. To start with some background, transposition of the great arteries, or TGA, is a congenital heart condition where the two main arteries leaving the heart are connected to the wrong ventricles. This causes blood to circulate incorrectly around the body. The main treatment is the arterial switch operation. During the surgery, the two arteries are switched back to their correct positions. An important part of this operation is that the pulmonary valve becomes the patient's new aortic valve, which is called the new aortic valve. New aortic valve, which becomes a new neo-aortic valve. Sorry. Although the operation has very good long-term outcomes, some patients can develop problems later on, such as enlargement of the new aorta or problems with the new aortic valve. Okay, my research aim. This led to my research aim. My aim was to investigate why some patients remain stable after arterial switch surgery, while others develop progressive problems with the new aorta and valve. I was particularly interested in whenever certain characteristics could help identify which patients may be at greater risk. Okay, methodology. I used a secondary research approach, meaning that rather than collecting my own patient data, I reviewed research that had already been published. I mainly used PubMed to find recent and relevant studies on neo-aortic outcomes following the arterial switch operation. I compared findings from individual studies as well as systematic reviews and meta-analysis to identify factors that were repeatedly associated with neo-aortic complications. Yep. My results, my findings. The research showed that most patients had good long-term outcomes following the operation. Significant problems with the new aortic valve occurred in around 2.9% of patients, while around 1.6% required another procedure. However, several factors were associated with a higher risk of developing complications. These included having a hole between the lower chambers of the heart, previously needing pulmonary artery banding, differences in the size of the main arteries, and enlargement of the new aorta. Changes in the coronary arteries also showed a weaker association. Another interesting finding was that the new aorta was less flexible than a healthy aorta, which may contribute to valve problems over time. Okay, so this chart shows how common it is for patients to develop a leaky aortic valve, called aortic regurgitation, after their surgery. Also looks at different things that might make this problem more likely, like whenever they had a wall defect in the heart or other specific heart features. Okay, now discussion. Sorry. Okay, so what do these findings actually mean? They suggest that the outcome isn't the same for every patient. Both the patient's heart structure before surgery and changes that happen after surgery may influence how the new aorta develops. The reduced flexibility of the new aorta may also help explain why some patients develop valve problems over time. Therefore, identifying patterns with these risk factors could be useful because they may benefit from a closer long-term monitoring, allowing changes to the aorta or valve to be detected earlier, which can be critical to help the patients. And that's my references. And oh, I was told to include feedback what I learned from our draft meeting yesterday. So from the feedback, I learned how to present and convey my points more effectively. Before this, my PowerPoint had like chunky text. So that's why I included more pictures. I included more visual aids to support my explanations. And overall, it's helped me develop my scientific research and communication skills and helped improve my confidence in presenting scientific information. Thank you so much for listening. That's all.
Mashallah, well done, Aidan. That was really good. And it's good to see the improvement. Fantastic. If we move on to Fatimata, can you start sharing your screen? Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Again, if anyone has any questions or wants to clarify anything, please write it in the chat and I can reply, or whoever's presented can reply in the chat while the presentations are ongoing. Yep, we can see your screen, and then if you start presenting, I'll then confirm.
Okay.
Yeah, lovely. All you.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Fatimata. So I did the CMN medical research internship, and I performed a literature review on investigating the molecular mechanisms underlying insecticide resistance in Anopheles mosquitoes and what evidence supports their role in insecticide resistance. So what I'll be going through is the background of Anopheles mosquitoes and also insecticides, the mechanisms underlying mosquito resistance, aims and methods of this research, conclusion and future directions, and feedback on what I've also learned. So start off with Anopheles mosquitoes. These are the most common mosquitoes and species in Africa, and they transmit the most dangerous malaria parasite species, which is Plasmodium falciparum. So among this genus of mosquitoes is 460, and of 100 of them, they transmit human malaria. So there's so through the 100 species that transmit human malaria, the most common are Anopheles gambiae, Anopheles fenestis, Anopheles colusi, and Anopheles arabiensis. So now to go through insecticides. So these are the different mosquito insecticides. There's a lot more, but these are kind of like the four most common ones. So pyrethroids, chlorinated hydrocarbons, carbamates, organophosphates are the four main classes. And within those classes, they also have subclasses. So within those, they have different levels of insecticides within them. So some of those were used for experimentation, as you'll see in a bit. But WHO also mentions in its manual for monitoring insecticide resistance in mosquito vectors that when testing whether mosquitoes are resistant to insecticides, it's better to test each class rather than the subclasses so that you can actually see if there's a difference or not. So to go through the mechanisms of resistance, mosquitoes have different types of resistance. So there can be metabolic detoxification, target site mutations, cuticle thickening, and also behavioral avoidance. So to go through metabolic detoxification, mosquitoes have high levels of enzymes involved in detoxification that break down the insecticides before reaching its target site. So these can be P450s, GSTs, and also carboxyl esterases. And studies have actually shown that P450 overexpression in mosquitoes is linked to the resistant phenotype. And it basically works by converting the insecticide molecules into less toxic metabolites and reducing the effectiveness of the insecticides. So target site resistance, which is known as knockdown resistance, it's mainly seen in pyrethroids, which was one of the classes of insecticides, and also DDT, which was the one of the hydrocarbons. So basically what happens in a target site mutation is that the amino acid of the amino acid sequence basically mutates in the voltage-gated sodium channel in mosquitoes, and it alters the molecular structure. So this basically prevents the insecticide from binding to the mosquito, and it just makes it not effective. And also, in turn, the insecticide, it can't disrupt the neuronal signaling in the mosquito. Another way is cuticle thickening. So that's when the mosquito cuticle thickens and it reduces the rate at which the insecticide enters the body. And so that means that less insecticide reaches the target. And there's also behavioral avoidance, which is basically if the mosquito comes close to the insecticide, it will realize that it's there and then it will kind of move away from it. So the aims of this project were basically to identify what the major molecular mechanisms are in insecticide resistance or proteroid resistance in Anopheles mosquitoes. And I also wanted to critically evaluate what evidence is out there and that support the role of these mechanisms in insecticide resistance. And also, I wanted to identify what gaps there are from my literature search and basically just assess how the molecular resistance mechanisms impact malaria vector control strategies. So this is basically my methods. I did a PubMed search using secondary research, and I basically aimed to find peer-reviewed papers that were no later than 10 years ago. So first of all, my search got me 191 papers, and then I actually screened through 100 of them and found that 59 of them were not relevant what I was looking for. So then when I went through the abstracts for the papers, I excluded about 4, which were not, I was trying to look at Africa, so these ones were outside of Africa, and also whether the mechanisms were not relevant, I also decided to remove them as well. I ended up actually looking at 10 papers because there was a lot of papers to go through and also a lot to extract from them. So I decided not to use 49 of them and I just ended up using 10 instead for my review. So these were kind of basically how I put out my results. So I combined what I found from the studies to basically identify what the common mechanisms are, the difference, is there a difference between the Anopheles species and in the populations as well? And maybe if I could see if there were any gaps in the research as well. So the main mechanisms that I found were target site resistance. It was target site resistance and metabolic resistance were the most common ones. And those were the ones that I played in most of the studies. And multiple mechanisms, we also found that multiple mechanisms can occur together as well, which means that especially in peripheroids, so potentially a different insecticide might be more effective or possibly finding a new one as well. As over time, as peripheroids are used more, the mosquitoes will become more resistant. Metabolic detoxification mechanisms also do give evidence for more causation, and gene expression shows evidence for association through the different kind of methods that were seen. So I also included the studies here that I used so that you can kind of see, basically just make connections with what studies are and also what was found. So from this, I say that I can conclude and what the future directions are is to possibly look at functional validation studies to identify whether there is causation for genes rather than just association. There are functional validation studies out there, so if I am to look into this further, I can definitely look at those. They are limited, but it's definitely out there. I could also investigate how multiple mechanisms interact across Africa and also other continents, as well as there was information on other continents too. And also I could look into what can be done to actually overcome insecticide resistance, and currently who have tested out dual insecticide treated nets in Tanzania, I believe. And for feedback on what I've learned, I used my feedback was to use the design tab to create an aesthetic design that was consistent. So I'm not very good at designing PowerPoints. I also use more images in my presentation so that viewers can follow it easily. And I also included preliminary findings, even though it wasn't exactly complete, as there was a lot of papers to go through, but just so that it can be seen what has been done so far and also what the next steps are with this. and I've learned to also potentially look into journals such as the Frontiers in Malaria and also the Malaria World Journal to see what gaps there are. So if there was any potential for publishing. I've learned how to write scientific abstracts without completing a paper, as that is kind of what I've been used to do from uni. And also I've learned what a literature review entails, and also I aim to do more research on how to get my writing to a publication standard. So these were the references I used, and yeah, that's all from me. Jazakallah khair.
Amazing, mashallah, Fatima, very good. So that's it from my interns, and alhamdulillah, I'm sure you guys have seen the quality of work that they've done. It's really amazing to see and very good. Just a quick little ending point from me before I hand over to the next lead for the other stream. That as you guys can see, the interns have done a lot of work. They've benefited a lot from this, alhamdulillah, and all credit to them. They've done very good. But this medical research internship is built upon the skills they already have, and they're all quite varied. It's not like all of them are at the same level. Some of them are. One of them was GCSE, and now one of them's first year uni. The other one's finished his undergrad and is applying PhD things, and other one's done masters. So it's quite a big variety of students, but you know, these skills, they're applicable and they're important to learn if you're looking into research and things like that. So alhamdulillah, that's all very good, and it seems like everyone's benefited a lot, so it's really good to see everyone's journey. Thank you very much, jazakallah khair, and that's it from me on the medical research side. Back to you, Hamza.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And some really good presentations there. The important thing and takeaway here is, you know, you can on your CV now talk about how you conducted research and you were able to present on an online live stream, and it's something inshallah you can take forward onto your interview processes as well. Now we're going to be going on to the business data analysis stream. So this is the stream that we've been doing throughout the years now, and we're going to be looking at some of the local data that we've now seen in Crawley. I think there's around 75 people that responded to the data, so it'll be interesting to see what these findings are. So if I could call upon group 1 to join, and we can make a start, inshallah. And we've got 3 groups. Each group will be covering a different section, and we'll go from there, inshallah. Okay, so group 1, when you're ready.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Zarifa. Together with Mariam and Sadia, we will be presenting the topic Islamophobia and hate. Next slide, please. The research question that we were looking into is, how do patterns of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim hate differ between Crawley, London and Manchester, and what demographic, social and methodological factors explain these differences, with particular attention to gendered Islamophobia affecting Muslim women? Next slide, please. This PowerPoint summarizes key findings from the Crawley Islamophobia survey that we conducted and compares the data with secondary data about Islamophobia in London and Manchester. It includes demographic insights, thematic analysis, gendered experiences, and visualizations based on the uploaded dataset. Here are the 5 main research objectives. The first being examining patterns of Islamophobia in Crawley. The second being comparing primary data with secondary from London and Manchester. The third, analysing demographic factors such as gender, age and social class. Fourth, exploring gendered Islamophobia, particularly experiences of Muslim women. Fifth, identifying themes such as public space hostility and online abuse. Islamophobia is a significant form of religiously motivated hate crime in the UK, with Muslims disproportionately affected by religious hate crime. 4,478 religious hate crimes targeted Muslims in England and Wales in the year ending March 2025. This represented a 19% increase in hate crimes targeting Muslims, rising from 2,690 in 2023/24 to 3,199 in 2024/25. One form of Islamophobia is online Islamophobia. This can include discriminatory comments, threats, stereotypes, and misinformation targeting Muslims. Online platforms can therefore contribute to the normalization and amplification of anti-Muslim stereotypes. This is particularly important for younger Muslims because of their greater exposure to the digital world. Misinformation misinformation and negative stereotypes about Islam and Muslims act as important contributors to Islamophobic attitudes. However, education and greater opportunities for interfaith dialogue and interaction can help challenge these stereotypes. Community initiatives such as Mosque Open Day, school education, and interfaith programs can therefore form part of a preventative response to Islamophobia. This is particularly relevant to the Crawley survey because respondents identified education, awareness, and greater understanding of Islam as potential solutions. An important factor to consider when analysing and assessing Islamophobia is underreporting. Police recorded hate crime statistics should not be treated as a complete measure of prevalence because not every incident is reported to the police. Only 44% of hate crime incidents came to the attention of the police compared with 37% of all CSEW headline crime. This means that recorded statistics are likely to represent only a proportion of the actual experiences of victims. Underreporting is particularly important when comparing smaller communities such as Crawley with larger cities because differences in reporting infrastructure and awareness may affect recorded figures. Islamophobia particularly affects women. This is because religious clothing such as the hijab and niqab can make Muslim identity more visible. Women represented approximately 65% of anti-Muslim hate crimes, demonstrating the gendered nature of anti-Muslim hostility. Gendered Islamophobia can extend beyond physical violence, and Muslim women can therefore experience Islamophobia in everyday environments such as public spaces, transport, workplaces, schools, and online platforms.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Mariam and I'm just going to talk about the data behind our research. So we conducted a survey to collect data about the different people affected by Islamophobia, and we had 71 people participating from Crawley in this survey, out of which 64.8% were female and 35.2% were male. The sample therefore contains a higher proportion of female respondents. This is important to note because our research specifically examines gendered experiences of Islamophobia, particularly the experiences of visibly Muslim women. We can then go on to talk about the factor of age, where we had our largest age group being 19 to 24 years old, and our second largest group being 35 to 44-year-olds. This matters because age can influence people's social environments, experiences, and exposure to Islamophobia. Including different age groups, therefore, helps provide a broader picture of community perceptions. This then links to social class, where we had 43.7% working class, 36.6% middle class, and 2.8% upper class. This matters because social and economic circumstances may influence where people spend their time, their exposure to public spaces, and their experiences of discrimination. These next graphs show how people felt about Islamophobia in Crawley, where the data shows that applicants had mixed answers about whether Islamophobia was actually a problem in Crawley, with 49.3% reported witnessing or experiencing Islamophobia and 50.7% said that they hadn't. However, out of those who had experienced it, 33.8% said that they had changed their behavior because of concerns about Islamophobia. In the graph on the left, you can see where respondents actually reported experiencing Islamophobia, with our two largest groups being public spaces and public spaces with 47.9% and online and social media with 33.8%.
Okay, thank you, Mariam and Zarifa, for presenting the first part. And my name is Sadia. I will continue with the last part of our presentation. So, looking at the comparison between Crawley, London, and Manchester, we have to be a bit careful while comparing the number of recorded incidents because these places are very different in terms of population size, demographics, and also reporting. So if one area has higher number of recorded incidents, it doesn't automatically mean that there is more Islamophobia there. These types of experiences are also different. For Crawley, People reported experiences in places like public spaces, workplaces, schools, and neighborhood, while in London, public transport was an important area. And in Manchester, street and nightlife related harassments were also mentioned. So, overall, this shows us that Islamophobia can be experienced in different ways depending on the area and the people living there. Next, we'll be talking about the findings. Moving on to the overall findings, we found that the location isn't the only factor that affects Islamophobia. Public spaces were an important place where people experienced Islamophobia. Gender was also important, especially when looking at the experience of visibly Muslim women, those who wear hijab and scarves. But we also need to be careful when looking at our results. Our survey only had 70 to 75 respondents, and they weren't equally divided by gender, age, or social class. So we can identify some patterns from our survey, but we cannot say that those results represent everyone living in Crawley. So, just to conclude, our research shows that Islamophobia is real and it is a complex issue in Crawley. Official statistics are useful, but they don't show the full picture because not every incident is reported. Our research shows that things like location, gender, age, and social class and reporting, they can all affect people's experiences of Islamophobia. One of the main things was found that public spaces were a common place where people experience Islamophobia. So for future research, having a larger sample and more balanced group of respondents will help us get more reliable result and make better comparison between different areas. And that brings the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Amazing presentation. That's really good to share. We just want to ask a few questions. So what was the biggest insight or takeaway from this, or what surprised you the most in this presentation and the findings that you found? You all can take a turn answering each. Just give your main kind of takeaways or facts that surprised you or came out the most.
So I'd probably say what surprised me the most was like there was a lot of people that said that they had experienced Islamophobia in Crawley, and that's quite surprising because Crawley is quite a diverse area, and you wouldn't expect to have that many people having experienced or witnessed it. So yeah, I would say that was quite surprising.
Yeah, that is a big takeaway, and I think as a community organization, it's something that we're definitely going to be looking at. So thank you very much for the work that you guys have done. I want to ask the next group to come on now. So is the next group ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, amazing. Make a start, please.
Okay, I just want to confirm, can everyone see my screen?
Yep, we can see it. It's great.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so today we're going to be I'm going to be talking about exploring the community needs within the Muslim community. So welcome everyone, my name's Rita.
My name's Ariba.
My name is Nuha.
And okay, that brings us to our research question. So we're going to be looking at what are the gaps in services and opportunities currently available to Muslims, and how this differs between areas like Crawley, London, and Luton, and also how we can make organisations create more inclusive, accessible, and representative services that reflects the needs of the wider Muslim community, and particularly for women. Oh, come on. Okay, so essentially what the PowerPoint explores is we're going to gain an insight into the needs, wants, and demands of Muslim organizations and mosques, and this is essential for identifying gaps in existing services and community provision. So we're going to be comparing experiences across Crawley, Luton, and London. So our group aims to explore how well current services reflect the diverse needs of the Muslim community, with particularly focus on support for Muslim women.
So our objectives is to understand the wants, needs, and demands of Muslim organizations, as well as to identify the gaps in public services for Muslims. We also would like to see, we also were interested to see whether Muslims are represented within today's society.
We have produced primary research from people in Crawley and gained an insight into what local mosques can do better to serve the community. This question generated a large amount of qualitative data, such as more opportunities for youth development. For example, local mosques could organise engaging educational events, workshops, and teaching programs that can equip young people with knowledge, confidence, and valuable life skills that they may not currently have access to. Another response was greater support and opportunities for Muslim women. They could do this by creating safe and welcoming spaces where Muslim women can connect, share experiences, and develop their knowledge and understanding of wider society. This could include workshops, mentoring, educational programs, and social events that encourage personal growth, community, and meaningful community participation. However, the 21% could also indicate that different groups within the community have different experiences of their local mosque. For example, some people may regularly attend mosque activities and therefore have clear opinions about what could be improved, while others may have limited involvement and feel that they do not know enough to make a suggestion. This is particularly significant when considering groups such as young people, women, elderly people, or newer members of the community. On the line graph, the results show the age affects people's views on how local mosques could better serve the community. Younger groups show more variation, while the 45 to 54 and 55 plus groups are much more consistent. This may be because different age groups have different needs and experiences of mosque services. For example, younger people may want more youth activities, social support, and opportunities to get involved. Therefore, mosques should consider the need of different age groups rather than using the same approach for everyone.
Okay, so we also looked at how well the Muslim community supports people experiencing financial difficulties in Crawley. As we can see from the pie chart, 37% of respondents rated the Muslims community support as neutral, making this the largest response. However, 30% rated it as poor and 15% as very poor, meaning 45% viewed the level of support quite negatively. However, only 18% of people gave a positive response. And this is because that the financial support available to people in Crawley is not very widely known of. That's why a lot of people rated it as poor. And when we look at the age groups, in particular the 16 to 18-year-old age group is particularly notable for having a high proportion of neutral responses. However, the 25 to 34 age group shows a stronger negative response among the 55 plus group. Responses are more positive with both poor and good, and also at very good ratings, relatively high.
So another question that we asked was if there's enough social spaces within Crawley for Muslims to meet and socialize. So as you can see from the pie chart, most respondents felt there were not enough social spaces. 17% stated that there were sufficient social spaces available, whilst 15% were unsure about social spaces. So this could be because they might not be fully aware. The availability of accessible and suitable social spaces is a significant unmet community need, and this is what the data shows. If we also look at the graph here, the respondents between the ages of 19 to 24 and 25 to 34 held this belief predominantly, but individuals aged 35 to 44 selected no, there wasn't enough places to socialize. The group of 16 to 18, however, despite being more positive, was based only on 3 respondents, and this may not be an accurate representation of the data. It's not enough.
Okay, that brings us to our next question. Does the community provide enough networking and career opportunities for young Muslims in Crawley? As we can see from the pie chart, the majority trend is that most people think that the community doesn't provide enough networking and career opportunities for young Muslims. However, around 38% are unsure and a small minority thinks that they do. This is because not a lot of these career opportunities and networking events they're not very widely advertised. And that brings us to the age groups. So people within the age group of 25 to 34 strongly believe that the community doesn't provide enough networking or career progression. However, those aged 19 to 24 think otherwise, and this is because they can access these resources such as social media and have a look at these through different social media platforms, and they become aware through more family and friends also.
We also looked at whether there was enough educational support and opportunities for Muslims in Crawley. And the data showed that the majority of respondents felt unsure or did not believe that there were sufficient educational opportunities within the Crawley area. Those within the age bracket of 25 to 34 showed that none of the participants believed there were enough educational opportunities, such as tutoring, mentoring, or workshops. With 19 to 24-year-olds also having a predominantly unsure response.
Lastly, we examined whether respondents felt that disabled Muslims have equal access to mosque and Islamic community services. Just over a quarter of respondents believe that disabled Muslims do not have equal access, whilst almost 1/3 felt that they do not have equal access. The larger proportion, 39%, selected unsure, indicating that a significant number of respondents may not have sufficient knowledge, awareness, or personal experience to confidently assess the accessibility of mosque facilities and services for disabled Muslims. Overall, these findings suggest that equal access for disabled Muslims is not clearly established or consistently recognized within the community. The relatively high proportion of respondents who believe access is unequal raises concerns about potential barriers such as physical accessibility, limited facilities, communication support, or a lack of services specifically designed to accommodate different disabilities. Furthermore, the graph on the right demonstrates how younger respondents gave more varied answers, which suggests that their experiences and opinions are less consistent. This could be because younger people have different levels of involvement with the mosque, different expectations of what services should be available, or different experiences of whether everyone is treated equally. Some younger respondents may feel that access is already relatively equal, while others may have experienced barriers or felt that certain groups are not fully included. In comparison, the 35 to 54 age group had higher no responses. This suggests that respondents in these ages may be more likely to believe that equal access is not currently being achieved. One possible reason is that people in this age range may have more responsibilities within their families and communities, meaning they may have greater awareness of practical barriers affecting different groups. For example, they may notice differences in access to prayer spaces, activities, leader opportunities, or facilities for women and children.
Okay, that brings us to our recommendations. So in regards to the Muslims experiencing financial difficulties and career progression, we can support those experiencing financial difficulty by opening food banks and also raising awareness. So this can be through word of mouth, so through family and friends, and also just portraying leaflets around Crawley, and also raising awareness on social media about networking events and career opportunities through social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn also.
So for social spaces, one thing that could be done is obviously utilizing social media platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook to bring awareness to individuals of all ages, of all types of social events. In regards to educational opportunities, maybe low-cost tutoring services within community centres or mosques. Also, potentially a Muslim mentoring program where we pair Muslim university students with A-level students, etc., to provide guidance on applications.
And in order for mosques to serve their community, it's improved support for women. For example, they could provide accessible women prayer spaces, women-led programs, mentoring, skills, workshops and opportunities for women to contribute to decision making. And another way is that they could support young people, create youth clubs, educational programs, career advice, and safe spaces where young people can socialize and seek guidance. And lastly, they could provide mental health and well-being support. For example, they can offer counseling, well-being workshops and support groups while ensuring services are culturally and religiously appropriate.
Right. Amazing. Can we go back one slide?
Yeah, of course.
So really like these recommendations, and there's actually a lot
Thank
that
you.
we can actually proactively take away. Just wanna, do you guys want to kind of mention anything that was kind of surprising to you, that you were quite surprised about when doing this, your research, anything that you want to kind of take away and extract?
Yeah, the fact that a lot of young people feel like there's not a lot of like career opportunities and like career progression with Crawley. Like for instance, like the Muslim Crawley Network, this exists. I feel like maybe not a lot of people know about it, but it exists for a reason, and I feel like it's been a great tool.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair enough. Amazing. No, really good presentation, and kind of as mentioned before, this will really juice up your CVs going forward, and it should equip you with the right tools when you next go to your interviews.
Okay. The presentation today, yeah, it focuses on Muslims and Muslim businesses across 3 different regions, so Crawley, Luton, and Slough in London. The aim of the presentation was to understand the economic contribution and like the size of the Muslims like in these areas and the population. See, like Crawley, for example, had a lot of people, and yeah, it was good. Okay, so I'll be comparing the 3 locations through the slides, and I got Yassine, Ishak, and the one that can't make it. They'll all be presenting today. And yeah, we'll be going over like barriers Muslim businesses face, the like halal certification, the consumer trust, the Sharia compliant finance, and stuff like that. So we also did like both primary research and secondary research. So our primary research was via questionnaires. So we went in person and questioned people on their opinions on Muslim businesses and if they think it's good in Crawley. And then the secondary research, which Yassine did, he went over Slough and Luton and investigated the Muslims like opinions and the opportunities they have. Okay, so I'll pass it on to, is it Yassine first?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So essentially, first looking at the market size, I've compared the Muslim population share across Crawley, Luton, and Slough between 2011 and 2021. The main thing that stands out is the difference between the 3 areas. For example, Luton has the largest Muslim population share, and this is the difference percentage of the total number of people within the area, as it increased from around 25% to 33%, meaning that almost 1 in 3 people who live there identified as Muslim in 2021. In Slough, the Muslim population is also very prominent, rising from 23% to 29%. However, Crawley, on the other hand, is a lot smaller. Whilst it grew steadily in line with the other 2 areas, while it's a lot less compared to Luton and Slough, around 30% lower, 60% lower in terms of the overall general population. This is important from a business perspective because a larger Muslim population creates greater potential demand for products and services such as halal food, specialist retail, and Sharia-compliant financial products. Then, looking at the national context, the Muslim-owned businesses are estimated to contribute between 16 and 25 billion to the GVA, to the UK economy. So the local figures are part of a much wider economic opportunity. Overall, I'd say Luton and Slough represent the strongest Muslim consumer markets, while Crawley is a smaller yet growing market. So, however, having a large potential market doesn't necessarily mean that Muslim firms can grow without challenges. This chart summarizes the main barriers that I identified from the research. One of the key barriers is Sharia compliant finance. This is particularly relevant at the national level because businesses looking for Islamic finance, Islamic investments may require financial products that comply with Sharia principles, and the lack of Sharia compliant there's a lot of barriers between us going from being something that according to Islam, rather than, for example, dealing with riba, which is interest. Another barrier is halal certification and supply chains. So this is particularly relevant to Luton and Slough because of their size of the Muslim consumer market compared to Crawley. However, the demand and for halal products is a lot larger there. The barrier that is consistent across all three locations is data and visibility of Muslim-owned businesses. We don't actually have official statistics telling us how many businesses there are. However, an indicator of Muslim-owned firms, local businesses, local markets could be an example from the Muslim consensus of the areas. Finally, there is an issue of scaling and accessing wider markets. Muslim businesses aren't necessarily limited to Muslim consumers. However, research shows that Muslim-owned businesses operate solely with the intention of Muslims being their main source of income, source of their market. So an important opportunity is helping these businesses grow beyond their immediate local and community markets. Overall, the key point is that Luton and Slough have a large potential Muslim market, but opportunity isn't automatically converted into business growth. Finance, halal requirements, and limited data and scaling all can affect that process.
Moving on to HMC certification and consumer trust. We wanted to find out how important HMC certification is when Muslim consumers are choosing where to buy food. So me and my team conducted primary research to find out from a questionnaire that 59% of respondents said that they check for HMC certification, which is a quite significant number. This suggests that for the majority of people we surveyed, HMC certification can act as an important sign that a product is genuinely halal and can increase their confidence in a business. However, 30% said they don't check for HMC certification. This shows that certification isn't necessary or the deciding factor for everyone. Some consumers may trust the business itself, its reputation, or simply the fact that the food is advertised as halal. We also found out that 11% of respondents weren't aware of HMC at all. This is important because it suggests there could be an awareness gap among some Muslim consumers. So overall, our findings suggest that Muslim businesses displaying recognized halal certification could potentially build greater trust with customers and reassure them about the authenticity of their halal products. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thanks. Why does HMC certification matter? Looking at this in more detail, we can compare our quantitative and qualitative data. Our quantitative data gives us the numbers. We found that 59% check for HMC certification, 30% don't check whatsoever, and 11% weren't aware of HMC at all. We also asked whether people had ever avoided a shop or restaurant,
because it wasn't HMC certified. 45% said yes, while 55% said no. This is interesting because it shows that although certification is important to many people, it doesn't automatically determine every consumer's decision. Our qualitative responses help us understand why people feel that way. For example, one response mentioned that a business claimed to be halal but refused to show a certificate, which created distrust. Another response mentioned businesses selling partially halal products, such as having halal chicken or selling alcohol alongside halal foods. This shows that trust is influenced by more than just certification. Consumers may also consider the reputation of a business, transparency, the products being sold, and how trustworthy the establishment may appear. So the main insights from these two slides is that HMC certification can be an important way for Muslim businesses to build consumer trust, but is not the only factor that influences whether customers choose to support a business. Thank you.
Assalamu. Next slide, please. Can you change the next slide, please? Oh, sorry, it's not coming up on my. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so I want to start off by going through the shopping habits in Crawley. And we interviewed many people in person and obviously through the questionnaire online. So we wanted to see where people actually shop in Crawley, whether it's in Muslim-owned businesses or normal commercial supermarkets. And it turns out that 56% said that they very often went to Muslim-owned businesses for their like meat or stuff like that because they need halal meat, and shops, as they said, like Tesco, don't have as much variety. So this is important because it shows that even though Crawley is predominantly, no, not predominantly, but Muslims are prominent in Crawley, there isn't a wide selection of halal options in commercial, like big supermarkets. Okay, and it shows that so the the responses were varied, and many said often, like 20% said often, actually, and it just shows that there's high demand for these Muslim-owned businesses, and there is a lot of them actually. Someone I was speaking to really mentioned that they have been going there for a very long time. It's not a fallback in any way. They personally go there for all of their shopping, and that shows that there's a lot of demand for Muslim businesses and like Muslim products, but there's not enough supply in a way. So I think we can go on the next slide now. So I want to go on the trust gap. So what I mean by that is many people lack the confidence in the availability to HMC certified options, as Ishaq was saying, and it's much weaker. And the pie chart shows that, like, these are some questions we asked them. So, have you been let down by any businesses claiming to be halal? So, a lot of people said yes, as you can see. And that just shows that there should be a lot more like halal products in Crawley, given given the high rate of Muslims in Crawley. And then after that, we also got a pie chart, which is pretty varied, to be honest. It focuses on like the options. Do they think like the halal options are more or less? Many people said they're unsure, which shows that they they just don't know. And many people hide away from explaining to their customers about like halal options. As I did actually interview someone, and he talked about how people, like a company had told them that something's halal and it wasn't, as they checked out through other sources. So that just shows companies have lied to get more traction, basically. And many of it was pretty outdated as well. Okay, so moving on from that, sorry. Oh, okay. Is sorry, is he here? Sorry.
I don't think he's here.
All
Oh,
right, you guys
okay,
want to
okay.
continue on? Hey, are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
here,
yeah.
mate?
So I'll just talk about this.
Sure.
Sorry, my friend is having some issues. So in this slide, it brings together the evidence like we found on Muslims, the consumer demand. Firstly, I want to go through the Muslim population in Crawley. It increased from 7.2% to 9.7% between 2011 and 2021. So the potential consumer base has grown significantly. Our research also suggests that this is a this is an established market rather than just potential demand. We've identified demand across different types of businesses, including halal foods, restaurants, Muslim fashion even, and community services. And we do know that there isn't a high number of companies that are offering Muslim fitted clothing. So for the sisters, there isn't many that offer that, and that is a problem that we have in Crawley. The spending data also shows that Muslim consumer demand isn't limited to one type of purchase. Sorry. Um,
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's going well. So, with the population increasing quite a bit, and with that, do you see the halal food scene growing in Crawley? Do you think there's even an appetite for new businesses to come in and set up, or what do you think?
I feel like there should be an increase in halal food available, even though many that I interviewed did mention that there was a wide range. There isn't really like uh there's not really a lot of availability in like bigger super, like you know people go to the bigger supermarkets because it's better in some ways, but they have to go to that. So I feel like it is slowly, but and it should. So
Okay,
yeah.
no, that's
Sorry.
that's a really good insight. And thank you very much. And is this the last slide?
Oh, sorry, I'll go on another slide.
No worries. Yeah.
Okay, so we got the comparison here. So the comparison shows that the support and funding appears to broadly follow the size and geography. Oh, so yeah, as you were saying, of the local population and funding structures, rather than being specifically designed around the needs of Muslim businesses. Sorry. This is important because Luton and Slough have much larger Muslim populations than Crawley. So there is potentially a stronger case for targeted support in those areas. The research also points towards a gap around the Sharia compliant or interest-free finance. So in Crawley, we don't tend to have so much interest-free finances, and that is a big struggle for Muslims in Crawley. Not so much London, because there's more options. So it would be a lot harder for a Muslim to create a Muslim-owned business, given the riba and stuff like that. So rather than necessarily creating completely separate support system for Muslim businesses, the opportunity could be to make existing business support more accessible and appropriate for Muslim entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry
Thank
to
you.
cut
Thank
you
you.
off. No,
No.
that's really good insight. Thank you for sharing that. And on the left-hand side, you can see that how whilst we got a 10% Muslim population, it's significantly far less than some of the other towns you see. And in the other towns, if you look at there'll be plenty or more Muslim businesses. But for now, I think Crawley aren't doing too bad. And if with a growing Muslim population, there probably is scope for future business opportunities. So that's great. Any final insights that you want to just showcase from your findings, and anything what's the main highlight from your findings? What would you say? What would you guys say?
Me personally, I feel like my main insight is probably that it's really varied. So obviously Crawley is a small town, but there is loads of Muslims, but less opportunities for Muslim like entrepreneurs, stuff like that. And it's completely different in like Slough, for example, or even Luton, as I mentioned earlier on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like that's a big problem that we need to
Yeah,
tackle.
definitely. We need to probably look at initiatives that are going to help grow entrepreneurship within
Yeah,
Crawley. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, that
thank you.
was a really good presentation. Lots of insights and lot to take away. That is the final presentation from our business analyst stream. Now what we're going to have is the tech stream. And the tech stream is a new stream that we're doing. So yeah, let's see how they do.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Abdulaziz, and I'm hoping everyone can hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. I was the project manager for the tech stream. We did end up splitting into two groups to tackle two separate ideas, but just before I go through those, I'll give a little bit of a background, and I'll share my screen really quickly. I'm hoping everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
You're showing the Sheikh personal assistant. Do you want to give a
Yep.
quick background on what the
Yeah.
ask is and what you went and investigated before we kind of get into the details of this?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. So essentially, the tech stream was tasked with trying to figure out and create a product that solved a problem for specific people. Now, we were left with quite a general and vague idea, so it gave us a lot of creative freedom when it came to actually thinking of an idea. But my group eventually settled on an idea that tried to actually tackle a problem within the Muslim community. Essentially, we went and researched a bit. We did utilize a lot of insight from loads of different people inside of our group. We had a group of almost around 10 people. So we obviously threw a lot of ideas around and a lot of insight in between each idea, as well as a lot of help from our mentor. We eventually, as I said, we wanted to create create a solution to a problem within the Muslim community. But yeah, so this is essentially a Sheikh personal assistant. The main idea is to streamline the process of people of knowledge and people who are quite busy when it comes to scholars, imams, mulanas, anything like that, where they have a lot of kind of admin work. So instead of actually, when it comes to people who have a lot of admin work like this, normally you'd have a personal assistant, but obviously in real life it does cost money and things of that nature to actually have people come out and sort out these administrative tasks for you. So this is essentially not to completely disregard and replace that person that may do that job, but to essentially help someone of importance to organize themselves, organize their inbox, and be able to focus on their time on more important matters instead of only focusing on spending time on replying to emails and things of that nature. So I'll kind of walk you through how this works. It's obviously a very simple idea, but a lot of work is put into it, of course. So as you can see, this is the main kind of main dashboard, you could say. It shows many emails on over here in this panel here. You have multiple emails over here that you can switch in between. Obviously, when it comes to it, people do utilize different emails for different things. So this kind of brings it all together so that the people of knowledge and whoever else who may use this product can actually have everything all in one place that they can categorize properly. I would also like to say, obviously, since we are Muslim and we want to create something that is good for people in the Muslim community, it doesn't mean that the scope has to stop there. Essentially, we could also, bring this out for people who may have small businesses or professionals and people in the corporate world who just have a lot of things on their plate and could definitely use the extra bandwidth from this streamlined organization tool to utilize their time better in different places. So I'll just walk you through this really quickly. Over here we have a panel with all of the emails that you may be getting. We do have different filters here. So each email, as we can see, as we click on one, it comes with a tag, and the email is then filtered in between depending on what you kind of need it for. Obviously, this one is personalized for a shuyukh or a person of knowledge. So we have a speaking or pastoral or invoices categories there. And as I said, when you open an email, it kind of opens in the right hand side. So you can have a big kind of look at the subject and the main body of that email. Now, the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about is when, obviously a lot of people send many emails to people of knowledge and things of that nature. They ask for questions, they ask for bookings and things that are kind of a little bit repeatable. So the main thing over here is our quick actions and template selector. We have different options here: speaking inquiry, pastoral counseling, invoice confirmation, and general inquiries. You don't actually have to select any one, and you can go straight away and create your custom email that you can reply back to them with. But the main idea is that you press on one of these different templates, and you can easily have a message that can be edited a little bit and sent straight away. That's to kind of just streamline that process instead of having to draft out an email every single time someone sends a new email. Even when many emails may be similar, you can set a certain template for a certain kind of email that may obviously be coming in very often. This is just a simple template for the time being, just to showcase the things that you can do with this. But as I said, as this one was tagged as a speaking email, obviously it automatically went for a speaking inquiry right here. But if you were to click on the pastoral one, as it's linked over here, it would go straight for a pastoral counseling template. But obviously, as I said, you can change it out as you wish. So you don't actually have to go for whatever one, and you can obviously edit it and delete it to type in whatever you want. And then obviously, as soon as you send the reply, it comes up with an answered tab. So you can then press done, and it will go into your done pile. Obviously, the more you do, it will organize all of it for you and things of that nature. And then if you were to go another thing here, let's say you wanted to check out how You can obviously, a lot of people get bookings for events and whatnot. If we scroll down a little bit here, we come up with a calendar sync. So this one actually talks about a session for sixth form students, which would run between 10 and 11 a.m. on the 7th of October. So down here, it would come straight away with taking the information from that email using an algorithm, of course. This is currently all hard coded as it is just a demo. But the main idea is that you would be able to add the event to the calendar and then it would come up down here. Now, of course, when it comes to the calendar, you can have a little mini one right here so you can see what's going on in different days. You see you have a little blue dot on certain days, which shows that you have an event on that day. But you can also go onto your full schedule based on all of the different meetings and whatever else that may have come from different emails, of course. So that is the main kind of rundown of the this product idea. Obviously, as I said, there's a done category. If you wanted to get rid of one, for example, you just archive it, you go straight into your archive bin, and that is separate from your done bin, which is essentially so you can go back to it and see what's going on. Obviously, the archive bin will have a separate kind of function where after a certain period of time, it will get rid of that email. But yeah, so obviously you have your sent box as well. So it's essentially just a streamlined version of, so you can connect all of your emails into one place and organize them in the best way possible. As I said before, this is the schedule place, so you can see all of your calendar. And yeah, that's basically the main rundown of this product. As I said, it's not only for people who, people of knowledge and in Islam, which is, obviously our team thought of this with Islam in mind, and that's why we called it the Sheikh Personal Assistant, because this was the kind of core idea behind it. But of course, as I said, it's very scalable and it can be marketed to not only people who are people of knowledge, but also, as I said, small business owners and professionals just in general. But yeah, that's the main kind of idea behind our whole sort of internship.
Nice. That's actually really good that in a week's amount of time you were able to get a prototype together. That's really impressive. And for those of you watching, it was only on last Sunday where they were provided the task for the rest of the week, and within 5 days they came together, they worked as a team, and they got a prototype which they showcased today. So really exciting to see that, we've got some, mashallah, really good prospects here in Crawley that we need to make use of. So Yusuf, do you see yourself potentially continuing this project, going beyond this internship? Sorry, not Yusuf, Abdulaziz.
Yeah, I definitely do see the potential behind this project. There's definitely a lot of people. I think there's quite a high demand, not only in Crawley, obviously, but all over the country, who could definitely use this. A lot of people who I know personally, and some people of knowledge whose talks I go to, they actually, they struggle when it comes to admin work and when it comes to kind of organizing time. So this is a product that could definitely be useful for these particular people to maximize their time and their value when it comes to productivity. So as I said, I think this is definitely a project that has a huge amount of potential and it could definitely be scaled very largely all across the country.
Amazing. That's really good to hear. Jazakallah. Let me now bring in the next PowerPoint. So next team, can you please make your way on, and we can make a start. Who's the the PM for the next team? Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah, when you're ready. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sherry. I'm the project manager for this project, and me and my team, we've created a verified video database for anybody trying to seek knowledge from videos of lectures or any sort of Islamic video. So I'm gonna hand it over to Abdullah.
Assalamu alaikum. So me, Sherry, and Mohammed, we are the second part of the ITIL project. So I'll get straight into it. The problem is that there's better Islamic lectures on the YouTube. So the problem is finding the right information quickly. So a lecture could be an hour long, and the specific answer for someone could be buried in between like a 30 or 40-minute video. If you're like a casual learner, you probably don't have the time to watch the entire lecture. Or if you're a new Muslim like a reaver or someone unfamiliar with Islamic terminology, the amount of information and unfamiliar vocabulary can be also like overwhelming. And then you have like students of knowledge, they have a different problem. They might actually want to find the whole lecture, but they need to find specific arguments, references, or part of the discussion without spending an hour finding the video manually. So we've identified those three users. The problem is that they're all given the same 1 hour video. So the issue isn't that the Islamic education content doesn't exist. It's the issue that the content isn't structured around how people actually want to consume and research it. So our solution to it was a project called Sumdean. It's a curated summary platform for Islamic lectures. Instead of giving every user the same full-length lecture and expect them to search for it themselves, we break each lecture into 3 levels of depth. First, there's like a 20-second video. This gives like the main idea almost immediately. It's for someone who might only have a few seconds but still wants to understand what the lecture is about. Then there's a 2-minute executive summary. This gives a more complete overview of the lecture without requiring the user to sit through the entire video. Finally, there's a 10-minute deep dive. This is aimed more at students of knowledge. It contains key takeaways, detailed information, and timestamps that link back to specific moments in the original YouTube lecture. So the user can decide how deep they want to go. But Sumdean isn't simply a summarization tool. Lectures have to come from a approved scholar and meet our minimum YouTube threshold before they can be added to the platform. This gives us a basic quality control layer rather than simply collecting random Islamic videos from YouTube. We also use detailed tagging system. Lectures can be categorized by topics such as Akida, fiqh. For fiqh specifically, we include relative madhabs, so the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, or Hanbali. That matters because the platform shouldn't present a particular school's position as though it automatically represents every school. So ultimately, Sumdean takes long form Islamic content and turns it into something that is easier to discover. Yeah, and that's it. I'll hand it back to Sherry.
Okay, thank you, Abdullah. I'm just gonna get onto the features of the web application. So, as Abdullah was saying before, we have the different types of filters here for each video that's tagged here, and you can filter through them by simply just selecting them multiple different ones. Very easy to quickly find what video you want to watch, and also the beginner, intermediate, and advanced level for the audience to choose from. Advanced obviously being more complex topics, and beginner easier ones. And up here we have a search bar for, as this is a video database, there should be lots of videos on here. Hopefully, if this was to be quite a big thing, you'll be able to search for any video you want by the title of it, and it'll just simply just filter through it really quickly. And then the open lectures, so as well, before you click onto a video, here's the video right here. You have the title, the tags above, duration, views, all of this, the information of the lecture on the right side, the tags again, and actions. So you can go straight to the YouTube channel itself on there. You can manage a lecture, so you could do download it or do different things to it, turn into PDF, that type of thing. And here you have the explanation of each different type of simplicity. So 20 seconds, 2-minute, 10-minute dive. It breaks down the video into edible chunks. However, the viewer wants to interact with it. And then below you have further reading, so stuff that they may want to go into deeper research for, classical texts, courses, so everything related to the video itself, and related lectures, so also further research here. And then
Right, so, oh, sorry.
Yeah, you continue.
Right, so in addition to the further learning resources, we also have a creation workflow, which sort of aims to filter out certain lectures. So there's 2 requirements that they must meet. The lecture must have a minimum number of YouTube views, so 100,000, and the scholars must be on the approved scholar list. And we have a validation system for this. So here I have an example lecture just with a fill-in title. In this scenario, the scholar this is an approved scholar, however, they don't meet the minimum number of views in order to be accepted. So if I go ahead and try to check the lecture, it'll be rejected. Because as you can see, the scholar's on the approved list, but it does not meet the threshold. Likewise, if I were to just put in a random name, even if it does meet the number of required views, it still will be rejected for the same for a different sort of reason, as you can see. And here we have a recent creation table, which has real lectures which would be accepted and rejected. For example, the fiqh scholar, as you can see, this is an approved scholar, however, it will be rejected. And we also have, in addition to this, hold on just 1 second. We have tag validation and tag editing, right? So if you go to a lecture and you go to manage lectures, as you can see, you can add all sorts of tags to the videos, making them more accessible. So as I add more core topics, more subtags also appear. But when I add the fiqh as a core topic, madhab is mandatory, as Abdullah mentioned previously, and the same changes will be blurred out, will be blotted out. And this isn't just the UI. This isn't just the UI side thing. This is enforced on the server side. And for it to display, I actually have to select madhab. And as you can see, it's got anti-say changes just like that. And this tagging system, this tagging module, which consists of core topics, madhab tags, subtags, and the validation rules, this was built as a standalone framework agnostic piece on purpose. So what this means is that it doesn't care whether it's sitting in this local demo or a full Next.js app with a real database. The exact same rules apply either way, because every lecture needs at least 1 core topic, as you can see, and every subtags need to belong to a core topic, as you can see just there. And so when we scaffold the real app, this module drops in with almost no changes, and the categories become database lookup tables, and the validator moves on to the API route, but the logic itself doesn't change. And the whole fiqh madhab thing is important because the fiqh differences between madhabs are of scholarly disagreement. They're not errors. So the tagging system ensures that the platform never presents one school's ruling as if it were universal, and you can select it according to the lecture. And that's basically the tags done.
Amazing. This looks really good, by the way. And just a reminder for those who might have just joined now that these interns were tasked with this project on Sunday. So they had 5 days to go in and execute this. So really good work. And you can put this on your CV. You can mention that you developed an online site as part of your internship and you created a prototype. And this is something that you can take forward to all your interviews going forward, inshallah. Just want to quickly ask a question. What was the hardest part about creating this prototype? So obviously, this might have been your first or second time. So what was the hardest part of doing this?
Personally, for me, I'm not sure about Sherry's side, but it was only putting everything all together because obviously we were all working different things. For me, it was the tag system, and then Sherry and Abdullah. What were yours again?
I did the 20-second, 2-minute, 10-minute thing summary. That was quite simple, to be honest. Majority of this wasn't that difficult, as we did have AI to assist, but yeah, it was just joining all the pieces together, all the different HTML and CSS things together.
Okay, amazing. This is really good, by the way. And thank you guys for presenting. Alhamdulillah. I think yeah, that's it. So that concludes our internship, summer internship. Next week, I'll be sharing you guys a link, and it's just going to be me explaining how you can now utilize this experience. So how to best leverage it on your CVs, what potential courses you guys have access to and what further opportunities that I can kind of get you guys in. So do keep an eye out next week. But thank you everyone for joining. This brings us to the end of the internship, and have a nice rest of your day. Assalamu alaikum, and well done to all the interns.